So, Apple just had their annual event where they unveiled their new iPhones and Apple Watches, along with their second generation of AirPods Pro. So, instead of rushing to throw out a video basically rehashing what Apple just said, I took a couple of days to think over everything they presented and to really put everything into an appropriate context. So, every year it seems like Apple picks a theme for their product launches. Last year, it was fitness and entertainment. In 2020, it was all about the home, with everybody being home because of the pandemic. That made sense. So nothing really out of the ordinary or really exciting for that matter. But this year was interesting. They seem to tell us either buy Apple products or you might die without them. And it felt weird, but damn, the tech they unveiled was very impressive. And while the tech is damn cool, I wondered, who was this really for? So let me tell you the features I really think matter for the products that Apple just announced. Let's start with AirPods. So with AirPods, of course, we have a new chip with an improved audio and noise cancellation and better battery. Those are to be expected on a second generation item. Design-wise, there's really nothing new here, and I really wish there was. I know it's hard to make something that will perfectly fit every ear, but I always had issues with the AirPods staying in my ears. Especially the left AirPod, it always seems like it slips from my ears and I always just have to keep adjusting it. And none of the included tips worked from keeping it from falling out of my ear. So while the new extra small size tip may help more people get a better fit, it would have been nice to see them include tips that maybe have like expandable foam or some other way of having a more secure fit without having to buy something from a third party. A nice addition though is the capacitive button that can be used for volume adjustment. I think that will be a very useful feature so you don't have to pull your phone out and just adjust the volume every time. I wonder if that can be programmed, but not sure what kind of function you'd be able to use that other than volume. So now the case has AirTag capability, and I think that is a very welcome addition and should have been included on the remote for the Apple TV, but that's another story. But the real feature here that I think something like city dwellers would consider upgrading to the second generation is the adaptive transparency. That is the killer feature of the AirPods. It would allow you to keep on transparency mode while softening the real loud noises. On top of protecting your ears from loud noises, it also keeps you from having to increase the volume or to be walking around with noise cancellation without being able to hear your surroundings. That is a very nice feature. This is also something that could be built into ear protection for construction sites. That would be a very nice addition where the sound can be automatically adjusted when you turn on a saw or something like that. If you have a perfectly good pair of AirPods, should you upgrade to the second generation? Big no. There's nothing here that would make me go out and spend $250 to upgrade. With the only niche case of someone who is surrounded by loud noises all day, I really don't think there's much value into upgrading if the first generation works perfectly okay. So now on to the Apple Watch. So now the SE and the 8 are pretty much the same other than a few spec bumps and maybe a little bit of stronger glass on the 8. They both now have the 8th version of the system and package, which is great. So if you really don't care about all the features of the Apple Watch, but just care about some of them, getting the cheaper version may be for you. Now, they both have the new crash detection option that automatically detects when you are in a crash and calls emergency services. Now, this is a very nice feature. It uses a new gyroscope, accelerometer, and a barometer in order to detect when your car has actually been into a crash. Apple spent years studying crashes and creating them to analyze all this data, and I think this will work out very well. Otherwise, there will be some very unhappy emergency service workers coming after Apple. So, other than the extra health sensors of the 8 and crash detection, they are pretty much identical to last year's models. The 8 does get a temperature sensor, but for now they are only advertising it for ovulation tracking. My guess is that's what the temperature sensor is really good for. I've never had a nurse take my temperature at my wrist, and I'm guessing that the readings were never going to be good enough to use for any of the other health metrics. Other than that, everything else seems more like just added software features than hardware features. So if you have the 6 or the 7, upgrading to the 8 will really not get you much. If you're not upgrading to the iPhone 14 and you travel a ton by car, especially if you travel in areas where someone may not see you get into an accident, the crash detection may be a good reason to upgrade. Now for the Ultra. This is a beast of a watch, and this is definitely not for the average user. This is meant for extreme athletes such as those competing in triathlons and people that find themselves in extreme conditions like climbing mountains and things like that. It is built like a tank with a titanium shell and a sapphire crystal display. It's got bigger buttons and a bigger crown so it can work better with gloves. It has a new customizable button on the side here that you can use the program so you can quickly complete an action without wasting time going through an app to find the function you want. It adds a new L5 GPS band to help you get better reception in challenging environments like if you ever ran a marathon between large skyscrapers, you can find that the GPS doesn't work as well. It has a built-in dive computer and a battery that will last 36 hours in normal mode. And there's a 60-hour mode that will be added in a future software update while still maintaining all of the fitness metrics. While this watch did not pass through the looks department, that's not what it's meant for. It is a very niche product. It seems like Apple is trying to undercut the likes of Garmin, and there are plenty of athletes out there that are iPhone users that would not hesitate to buy this. And the price of $800 is actually not bad. There are watches by Garmin with barely half the features that start at $700. So this may actually be a winner for Apple. And now for the iPhones. And let's start with the iPhone 14 and the 14 Plus. Still no USB-C, but that is definitely a feature that will be added in next year's phones since the EU has mandated it starting next year. They did eliminate the physical SIM and are going with eSIM for phones delivered in North America. There will be some growing pains here. If activation does not go smoothly, it may be an aggravation to have to go to a physical store to get your phone working. There will also be a pain for us to travel overseas. I tend to go and get a local SIM when I travel to Europe, and if the carrier does not support eSIM, it will frustrate travelers like me. The only thing is that when Apple makes a move like this, everyone else follows, so maybe they'll just get SIM adoption to start speeding up quickly. So basically the same A15 as last year with an extra core. Not sure how much more performance boost that will give you since the 13 that I have here is plenty fast. So the 14 and 14 Plus are basically last year's 13 Pro and Pro Max with 2 cameras instead of 3. The cameras now boast a better 12 megapixel sensor for low light, and the software now has what they call a photonic engine to better process low light photos. The cameras now have active stabilization built in, and they claim you will not require a gimbal anymore. Extremely likely that they're cropping in just like my Insta360 camera, so just keep that in mind. I will have to test this out when my Pro Max comes in. So the same crash detection that is part of the Apple Watch is now part of all the 14s, and an interesting feature that has been rumored for a while now is satellite communication. And usually, in order to get satellite communication, you need a dedicated sat phone with a special antenna in order to connect to that satellite. Otherwise, it will be very hard to point directly at the satellite to get connection. So Apple, though, came up with an ingenious solution. They use software and a built-in database of satellites in order to guide you to point you at the exact location to get a signal. A very neat feature and very well implemented. You basically open up the app and the phone guides you to point and move the phone until you can get a direct connection with the satellite. And once you get that connection to the satellite, it allows you to send a quick text message to emergency services and your location sent along with that. Now, it will not be as quick as opening the message app and sending a text message, and you can only send a simple plain text message. Just enough info to convey to emergency services what you need and what kind of help you need. So you can send a quick text message to emergency services or use some of the pre-selected options that Apple has created to send out your message quicker. And that is because you have to maintain connection with the satellite by holding the phone steady. So this gives you an easier way to get out your message quicker without having to fiddle with text messages and just keeping your hand steady for a while. While most people in urban areas will think, why? Not everyone has strong cell signal, and this could be a lifesaver. I live in the Northeast and I know plenty of people that go hiking. I had a friend who got injured on a hike and got caught in bad weather. His family knew where he was going, but they weren't expecting him until the next day, and if he waited that long, he could have lost his leg. He was fortunate he didn't hike as far as he was planning, since he would have been out of cellular range. You can also use it to send a quick find my location to your family and friends. I can see a feature like this potentially helping a lot of people. The interesting part with this whole satellite announcement was the quick mention of it being free for 2 years. But to me, something was hidden in that statement. A new future unannounced feature. The emergency part will be free forever. How can it not be? If you're in the mountains with a broken leg, are they gonna say, oops, sorry, you didn't pay your last bill? No. What I think is hidden in that announcement is that future iPhones will be able to do more than just text, but do actual full communication similar to the current sat phones. They are already in the process of developing that, and along with enhancement to satellite technology, this will be possible. Elon Musk's SpaceX is littering space with his low Earth orbit Starlink microsats, and with antenna improvements, this will be possible. It also gives a bit more context to the T-Mobile Starlink announcement. We may be in the beginning of the end for cell towers. This will obviously take more than several years, but 2022 may be the start of the end. Alright, so now for the iPhone 14 Pros. Welcome to the Dynamic Island. The pill has arrived. So they have a new true depth sensor behind the screen that allowed them to shrink the notch and create this new pill of ours. So the front camera now is a 12 megapixel front sensor with autofocus, which is actually very nice. You usually need a bigger sensor to get autofocus, so usually the front cameras are set at a focal length of about arm's length away in order to get sharp images. With this now, you can use it to take good selfies or record actually good videos by using the actual screen to frame yourself. The only annoying thing with the pill shape is it will be ugly for full screen videos, but really, what are the options? Is the punch hole camera of Samsung's any better? So what they've done is they were very clever in the use of software to take advantage of the pill area. The area can be used for notifications and to get out of your way when doing something like tracking sports scores or tracking a delivery or listening to music. And tapping on the area itself expands the notification so you can interact with it. I think this is a great use of UI, and with third-party app developers having access to this, we're going to see some very nice workflows as apps are updated. Another new feature to the iPhone is they finally have always-on display. Apple may be late to the game, but they always introduce a feature when they can do it right. The whole display dims as well as your wallpaper, but in a way that the picture still looks good. The feature does not look like just an afterthought. The dim display drops down to a 1 Hz refresh rate, so the hit on the battery is very low. And when the iPhone is like face down or in your pocket, the display dims completely. Plus, the notifications still work and allow you to see them at a glance. The one thing I would caution is to make sure you set your notifications to be visible only when your phone's unlocked, since now anybody can see your screen if the phone is face up. So there is a new A16 processor with 6 cores, and it will probably be a beast considering that the iPhone 12 I have here has been running iOS 16 for the past few months without a hitch. The new main camera now is a 48 megapixel sensor, but when you're taking regular photos, they are still effectively 12 megapixel images. They are doing this to keep the picture size relatively small, and they are doing this by pixel binning. What this means is that they are taking 4 pixels and treating them as one. What they do is they take the light from those 4 pixels, and by combining them, they can get more light information that makes for a better picture even in low light. So this is how they keep the size of the picture small. If the shot was a full 48 megapixels, it would be in the neighborhood of 100 megs, so sharing that would be a pain. So the camera system now supports focal lengths of 24 and 13 millimeter. They added a 2x telephoto setting, which is probably a preset in the zoom area. Since there's only 3 cameras, they probably use a combination of those 3 to crop in. And they do have a better macro camera for you flower photographers. It has built-in stabilization as the regular 14s and can shoot in 4K 30 and 4K 24. It has a very neat LED light array that can adjust the intensity depending on where the subject is. Now, if you shoot in ProRes, you can use the full 48 megapixel sensor, and that is what I'm excited about. I will be comparing this camera system with my Sony Alpha 1, which can shoot at 50 megapixels and costs about 6 times more than the iPhone. So consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you can see the comparison video when it comes out. What still sucks is that this phone still uses the Lightning connector. To get those pictures out at 48 megapixels, it will take a very long time. And don't get me started on the video, which will probably be several gigabytes in size. Calling this a Pro phone with an archaic connector is blasphemous. What's annoying is when they announce USB-C next year, everybody will cheer, which is dumb. All that aside, Apple's moves here with the iPhone are interesting. It doesn't seem like they care much about their lineup below the Pros. the 14 and 14 Plus are essentially last year's 13, and what I think is happening here is that people like me who always get the latest and greatest are looking and expecting the newer phones to have high-end features. But people like my wife do not care for that. When her phone comes to the end of its life, she's just going to get the latest basic iPhone version and will be happy for the next couple of years. So it seems like Apple's strategy with the iPhones is to have two distinct categories. I'm just going to go to my carrier and get whatever latest is out there, and nerds like me who keep refreshing at 8 a.m. to get the Pro on launch day. If you heard Tim Cook's interview with Kara Swisher at the Code Conference, you would have heard him answer a question about RCS by saying, just buy an iPhone. If you're curious to find out what RCS is and if you should care or not, check out this video over here. Thank you for watching.